Hello and welcome to the February monthly masterclass. This month's masterclass is all about emotional eating. Now, this is something that I have a lot of experience in personally, and it's a part of my journey and my transformation. So, it's something that I love to speak about and something that I love to educate about because when I got educated, this is when it helped me overcome emotional eating. So, in today's masterclass, we're going to talk about the truth about emotional eating and what it actually is. And then we're going to break it down into two different facets of the science of emotional eating, the psychology and the nutritional science. We'll also talk about how you can raise your awareness of your hunger and figure out the difference between an emotional hunger or a real hunger. And we'll talk about the initial steps to reduce emotional eating. Let's dive in. So let's talk about the truth about emotional eating. Have you ever noticed that when you're sad, you're tired, you're bored, or you're lonely, or you're stressed, or even just slightly inconvenienced, that you turn to food for comfort? Have you ever noticed that craving felt so intense and strong that you thought that you wouldn't be able to shake it unless you got that thing in your mouth immediately? Emotional eating can be all-consuming, contributing to food noise, overall distress, and feeling uncomfortable about food and the consequences of emotional eating. The effects of emotional eating can affect more than just your mental health, but also your physical health. But speaking from experience, as I mentioned already, emotional eating is a behavior that stems from the onset of a number of different negative emotions that cause us to want to numb or soothe rather than feel. And you can overcome emotional eating and finally get results that you once thought were not possible in your body composition, in your behaviors around food. The truth is, no one actually wants to feel sadness, loneliness, anger, fatigue, stress. And as such, we consciously or unconsciously avoid those feelings. And we try to replace them with eating behaviors that might make us feel better, such as binging, overeating, or comfort eating. The best way to get through your emotions, though, is through. Feel your feelings, journal, seek out professional help, turn to loved ones, to your partners, to your family, your friends. There's nothing strong about keeping quiet and keeping it within, right? We want to make sure that we are opening up and sharing these things so that we can move through them quicker. The strength is actually in being vulnerable, and this is going to help you process your emotions way quicker than ever before. Binging can manifest in some more serious types of disordered eatings as well, and that's not really what we're talking about today. But in a general sense, emotional eating is a behavior that can affect how we feel physically and at the time of or shortly after a binge session. Binge eating is like a thought of our subconscious mind. It has developed into a survival mechanism to help us cope with these unwanted feelings. And is a, as much as this feeling of hunger and need feels so strong, you don't actually have to act on it. The difference between emotional eating and the emotional hunger and real hunger. Real hunger starts in the stomach, and you can actually feel the grumbling and the emptiness almost. It increases gradually over time. I know sometimes when I'm really hungry and I haven't had a chance to eat or I'm not eating for whatever reason, I will feel like I'm getting a tummy ache, like a bit of a like an ache coming on. But also, another thing is that you will most likely eat whatever is available, not be specific about what the food is. Whereas when you have an emotional hunger, it's something specific, which I'll touch on in a little bit. It doesn't feel stressful, and it's unlikely that you're going to get a sense of relief after you've had the food to fill you, to nourish you, to fuel you. Emotional hunger, however, it starts in the head or the chest. It feels heavy, it feels like obsessive somewhat, and it goes from 0 to 100 so fast. Like I said before, it's a hunger that is for something very specific at the time. It might be you're driving home from work and you just really have to have French fries and nuggets at that time, but you know you've got food at home, but you just have to have it now. It can feel really stressful if you don't get it, and it can bring relief once it's gone. All right, we're going to talk now about the science of emotional eating. And we're talking about the role that dopamine has to play in this. So, understanding the role of dopamine in emotional and binge eating can help to see the patterns between binge eating sessions and the intense feelings that come with cravings of calorie dense and processed foods. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter and is an important part of the brain's reward system, and it causes the body to and mind to feel good when we're doing something pleasurable. While this can be triggered by a number of different activities that we might enjoy, the same receptors in the brain are activated by thinking about, planning, and researching food or eating. If we look back through an evolutionary standpoint, eating was a survival mechanism. When food was difficult to come by in the hunter-gatherer times, the brain wanted to ensure that there was a strong motivation for humans to do whatever they needed to do to find their food to nourish the body. But dopamine affects more than just a person's motivation to eat these days. Over time, we have seen more readily available fast foods, convenience foods, and highly processed foods that are high in sugar, salt, and fat. So they're highly palatable, they're tasty, they're delicious, they're things that we really enjoy to eat, right? And they've now become a source of intense dopamine boost. That feeling when you're craving a certain food and you literally cannot shake it is dopamine. And that boost of dopamine hits its peak when you finally satisfy the cravings. This dopamine boost can boost a person's mood while eating and power up cravings of certain foods repeatedly. So that might be why when you're craving a donut one day and you reward yourself with that donut, you will also want to be craving that donut or similar foods over and over again. This process is similar to what happens during drug and alcohol addiction due to similar brain regions lighting up, and that's when it becomes a habit. Now we're going to talk about the science of nutritional or the science of emotional eating from a nutritional standpoint. When it comes to the nutritional science of emotional eating, we have learned that we have a tendency to turn to foods that are higher calorie density and high in flavor. But what we also know is that these foods tend to be foods that are not processed as well by the body and are used in ways that are not beneficial for our health. It's no secret that these foods are high in sugar and salt and fat, like I mentioned just before, and they do have some adverse effects on the body when eaten in excess, such as weight gain, inflammation, high cholesterol, high risk of heart disease, but also they have a negative effect on our gut health too. It slows down the digestive system and it affects our mood, our energy levels, our blood sugar regulation, and even our sleep quality. It's really important that we focus on eating a variety of whole foods, including animal and plant-based proteins such as beef, chicken, fish, legumes, and some dairy, including Greek yogurt and cottage cheese, unsaturated fats like avocado, olive oil, nuts, grass-fed butter, and dark chocolate, and carbohydrate sources like pumpkin, sweet potato, regular potato, rice, and quinoa. And finally, micronutrient sources such as fruits and vegetables, where we get our vitamins and our minerals. So, I won't go too in depth with the benefits of each of these food groups today, but the conversation to bring this back to why it is relevant for emotional eating. These foods will sufficiently fuel you and nourish your body and not leave you feeling hungry when you eat them than if you are eating foods that are highly processed. Two of the biggest mistakes that I see women make who are reporting frequent emotional eating is that they're significantly under eating protein sources at all meal times, or they're simply skipping breakfast because they're not hungry. The inclusion of more regular balanced meals is quite often one of the easiest changes to make if you're finding that you're binge eating or emotional eating, especially at night. Some of the first steps to reduce or overcome emotional eating are to recognize, firstly, that it's become a habit. It's not something that you are doing by choice as per se, but it's more that you've learned this behavior to make you feel good. Like I was speaking about the dopamine effect before, it's that now, the dopamine response has learned that this is exactly what has made you feel really good in the moment. And so your brain is trying to trick you essentially into having that again. Secondly, you need to stop feeling guilty. Usually, emotional eating is quite common and there's no shame in it. However, if you do have body composition goals or goals of wanting to be healthier, or maybe you do have some gut health issues and you're struggling with mood regulation, anxiety, or you're feeling really uncomfortable in your body, then it's actually not a terrible, terrible thing, right? And I think the more that we not normalize, I don't want to normalize emotional eating because it can be an issue, but the more that we normalize that it does happen sometimes, the less hard on ourselves we can be. And then we kind of break out of that binge restrict cycle. Make sure you eat enough food. Like I mentioned before, you've got to make sure that you're eating protein at every meal and you're filling your plate or however you're eating each of your meals with whole foods and and being okay with craving unhealthy food and knowing that if you say no now, you will be able to move past those cravings a lot quicker. Don't restrict certain food groups. This just puts you into more of a like binge restrict cycle where you will not be having a certain food, right? Like let's say it's chocolate and then you cut it out completely because you think that's the right thing to do, but in actual fact, you're restricting so much that one day you're going to end up just really wanting to have a bunch of it. And so this ends up being a bit of a vicious cycle, right? So it's important that you still have some of these certain food groups, but have it in moderation. Also, letting go of the idea of having a perfect eating day is really important as well. We need to make sure that we have some compassion around how we're approaching our food. And especially if you are someone that has really struggled with emotional eating for a while now, it's really important to understand that you're probably not going to change these things overnight and that it's small compounding steps that is going to end up being the bigger result at the end of the day. And lastly, this one is so important and it's something I talk about a lot in coaching. It's raise your awareness so you can listen to what your body is trying to tell you. If you are craving like a sweet, like icy pole, right? Just take a second and think, okay, maybe there's something else my body needs. Maybe it feels like it needs to be hydrated. I quite often get cravings for like sweet stuff when I'm dehydrated. And so I obviously go and I switch like the lollies or something sweet or like an icy pole, like I mentioned. I'll switch that for some fruit, chopped fruit, or I'll switch it for a drink of some kind with some electrolytes to help me hydrate better. If you or someone you know is or has struggled with emotional eating, there are so many more things that can be done to support them and provide them or you with even greater tools to reduce or even overcome emotional eating habits. I created the 7 day this 7 day mini course, the Inner Hunger Project, that dives deeper into these topics as well. So, if this is something you'd like to dive into a little bit more in your own time, there are 7 different mini trainings that are no longer than 5 minutes each that help you to move through more of this content and really delve in deeper about why, with some journal prompts and that kind of thing. Otherwise, beg my pardon. Otherwise, if this is something that you would like to focus on a little bit more in our one-to-one coaching relationship, please reach out privately and we can have a call or have a conversation about how it could look to really help you overcome these things. That is everything for today's session. So I will see you guys in the next monthly training. And thank you so much for jumping on. I hope this has been really helpful for you. Please reach out if you have any questions at all.